I think these days, it's hard to find a single person whose life AI has not impacted, and beyond that, whose job AI has not impacted. So let's talk about it with someone who is very well versed on this topic and very intelligent. Arun Rai is a professor at the Robinson College of Business at GSU and holds the Howard S. Starks Distinguished Chair there, also the director and co-founder of RCB's Center for Digital Innovation. So the perfect person to speak with about this. Arun, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Savannah, for having me.
So, a lot of the headlines that we're seeing about AI are, these are my words, a little doom and gloom. It's AI is driving layoffs and it's coming for your job. What is the reality in your mind?
First, you're absolutely right. It certainly feels that way. And we have to acknowledge the pain and the anxiety that families are feeling around the dinner table. But I think there's a deeper story underway, and that companies are in the middle of a perfect storm. On the one hand, they have the pressure for cost cutting. On the other hand, they are under tremendous pressure to redesign jobs for the future. So what we are seeing is new jobs are being added, old jobs are being redesigned. And for companies that essentially throw AI tools at workers or approach this purely with a job cut perspective, that's awfully risky because you hollow out the enterprise. But I think we are seeing a lot of interesting and positive movement and momentum towards AI augmented work. Maybe we can talk more about how companies, educational institutions, government agencies are all coming together to figure out this positive future with AI, where we're creating jobs for people right from entry level to upwards, for people to work with AI for the new AI economy.
Yeah, and how do they strike that balance? Because from a bottom line financial standpoint, obviously, if you have AI that can replace, someone's job who's on your payroll, great for the bottom line, but you still need the people behind it. How do, businesses kind of think about that?
Yeah, I'll take one very simple example to kick it off, and that's from my own world of work, and that's in education. Today, we have faculty members, instead of sitting and coming up with first drafts of quizzes or practice assignments or tabulating scores of students or providing routine feedback. A lot of this is and could be done with AI. And we find faculty and educators getting that time to really achieve what they're supposed to be doing, which is student learning and student growth. As another very quick example, right? I mean, I think about one of my doctors at Emory, and he now uses ambient listening to capture our interactions. So he's actually able to look at me during the consultation and engage with me as a patient, as opposed to taking a lot of his time as a typist. So we see that also with nursing, where instead of running around and getting vital signs by the hour, a lot of this could be captured, the repetitive work, the automatable tasks, they could be captured, and space is created for human judgment to come in. And I think that's the big shift that we are getting, is that the benefits of automation are essentially creating and almost paying for that higher order value, where the human judgment comes together to work with AI. And we are seeing a lot of that with entry level jobs as well, Spanner, just in terms of how those entry level jobs are being created.
Yeah. I do feel like there is a lot of fear of AI. There are certain factions of people who are boycotting it altogether. But and it's my opinion, and I don't know if you agree, that this is kind of inevitable. I mean, it feels like when the World Wide Web, was invented, it's like everything's about to change. And we're just going into it. What would you recommend for just the general public, the general worker? I mean, should we be embracing this, and in what ways?
I think that's an awesome question, right? So when we look at it, even amongst our students here, there's concern around entry level jobs. I think there is a need for urgency. I don't think, I understand the fear factor, but worrying is not the goal. Our goal is to come up with a positive solution together. And when I say together, I'm just going to take an example, right? I mean, we had Georgia State have created something which is known as the PATH initiative, where we have pathways for AI training and hiring. It's a collaboration between GSU and MIT, along with Georgia employers, where we are trying to figure out, equip our students with the new cutting edge AI skills, and also a lot of work-based learning with our area employers. So what's happening is we have these new jobs and these new skills that need to be developed. And I think that's one approach I would say is partnerships in communities, among educational institutions, among corporations, with government agencies is going to be absolutely crucial. So there's a sense of urgency and action, and we need to get people ready, not nervous. And I think that's the key point I would like to emphasize here, Savannah.
Well, I like to hear that. Now, tell me from the business side, I mean, any words of advice to the CEOs of the world, or perhaps words of caution?
So glad you asked that question. I think if AI tools are thrown at employees, you purchase a license and say, now go figure it out, that's heavily anxiety inducing. There needs to be a plan in terms of what are the jobs, how do we upskill the workforce, how do we redesign the jobs. So the leadership needs to speak to investments in skills and redesign of jobs, which essentially becomes very crucial for their workforce to be able to work with AI and to establish clear goals rather than looking at traditional metrics of productivity, which miss the point in terms of the human value. What are the goals in terms of, let's say, for a customer service agent, building relationships, anticipating needs, and how do we create the pathway for those new skills and jobs is going to be crucial. One other point I would like to emphasize here, Savannah, I think with the PATH initiative, which we again have at GSU, we do believe, along with our colleagues at MIT and area employers, we sort of have this idea of AI X. And X could be any domain. So it could be in Atlanta, we have a vibrant fintech industry, for example, how AI functions for entry-level jobs and other jobs in fintech requires that synergy between AI and domain knowledge. So this becomes really crucial because the domain knowledge and judgment of the human becomes pivotal to leveraging AI. Similarly, AI in healthcare, AI in logistics and supply chains, AI in cybersecurity, and if I may say so, in your own world, in news and reporting and investigative journalism or whatever one might think about, it's AI in that context. So I think for us to really, leaders really need to step back and not think about generic AI tools, purchase licenses, load it on to employees. I think that's recipe for A, hollowing out the company, and B, making your employees really unhealthy, really stressed, and it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to your point that we are talking about all the time as a newsroom, as I'm sure a lot of businesses and industries are. Let me ask you, for the average person who's thinking and hearing what you're saying and thinking, okay, let me embrace this, let me see how I can work smarter with this. How do they start for people who are not versed in AI? What are your recommendations for getting to know it on a beginner novice level?
I think this is again a great point. I do think that applying it to simple tasks and really figuring out which tasks are repetitive and figuring out whether those could be allocated to AI and whether one is able to work with AI on a given task with trust. Not over reliance, but the right amount of reliance, because critical judgment in working with AI is absolutely crucial. So my own personal sense is not just learning how to prompt, but then applying it to a given task where somebody has domain knowledge and say, hey, does this make sense? Is this really releasing time for me? Is this serving as a thinking sparring partner in how it could challenge my thinking when I'm engaging in a certain task? So I do think that the application of AI in context, in a very sort of like break it down into tasks, establish small goals, and then develop confidence so one is not either over relying with AI, where there's a huge risk, right? Savannah, it's this risk around we over rely, and then anything that comes AI way, but from AI, we don't challenge it. I think that's not productive, of course. So getting that right amount of delegation to AI and supervision and checking of it is crucial. And I would say micro tasks in somebody's task domain is the best way to learn, not generic training workshops.
Arun, this has been such an interesting conversation. Your perspective is so insightful and interesting. Is there anything else you wanted to add or mention that we didn't get to touch on before I let you go?
I would say that in Georgia and in Atlanta, we have a tremendous opportunity here to lead the nation in how we do this. And that's what, as an educator and as a almost 30-year employee at Georgia State, go Panthers. I just look at it and say the partnerships we can establish so that we are setting goals, training our workforce to be able to work with AI, apply the right critical judgment, and take responsibility. That's another very crucial aspect, right? How do we set goals? How do people make judgment calls and take responsibility? We need partnerships, and we need to scale these partnerships so that we have our workforce realize the opportunities of this future. And we want to make sure that the population at large is not disadvantaged and we don't have polarization in opportunity, and we really move our workforce together. And I think this is going to take good partnership, but I remain very optimistic about Atlanta, about Georgia, setting ourselves just as a point, Savannah, with this PATH initiative. This is sponsored by Google.org along with MIT. I'm very pleased to share with you that GSU is, along with Massachusetts, the second national hub to build out this ecosystem. And I think it's an ecosystem play. We train students here. We are sharing whatever content we are developing with other colleges like Georgia Gwinnett, Clark Atlanta, Perimeter College, and we hope to scale it a lot more broadly. We're also creating work-based learning opportunities because in this, it's the ecosystem that really has to work together through a set of partnerships. So that's what I think, but short-term cost cutting, using AI to chop people's jobs is not the productive path. In fact, it's a highly counterproductive path in my mind.
Yeah, very well said. I got to say, someone who knows AI so well, hearing you use the word optimistic makes me feel the same. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.